Believe it or not, you're just a few steps away from finally getting to hold your dream doll in your hands. Those steps being finishing the head and making it so that it actually works with the body you made, figuring out the best printing method for your project along with some test prints, and of course the final finished pieces for your doll. I bet you're excited to bring all of that hard work into the real world, so let's jump straight into finishing the head. You should have your head fully done at this point, with the last thing you worked on being the ears. If you're happy with how they look and their placement, then make sure to duplicate them, because now we can permanently attach them to the rest of the mesh. If you want to make elf ears, you should pull them into the shape before you attach them, just to make things a little bit easier. To attach the ears to the head, you do it the same way we've been doing it for the last two videos, which is using the Boolean modifier. When you're done with that, duplicate everything again and go into sculpt mode. Basically here you're just smoothing the ears in place so that there's no harsh line. Okay, so here's a breakdown of the major cuts we're going to make to this head. First off, we need to separate the head into two parts so that we can access the inside of the head. Then we'll need to open up the inside of those pieces so that they're not just a useless solid chunk of clay. From that point, we're going to make the hole for our inserted eyes and the neck. And then at the end, we'll make the necessary connecting points for where the elastic goes and how the back of the head attaches to the front, which for the connection I'll be using magnets. Before we get too deep into anything, we first need to copy and paste the torso of our dolls into the head file. This is just so that we can make sure everything is the right size and in the right position. Once to do that, if you haven't already, add a sphere to the top of the neck. This sphere should be slightly bigger than the flat surface. At this point, you can merge the sphere onto the neck and smooth things out. Now you want to resize the head and all of its duplicates and drag it to the right spot. Don't forget to check the side view so you make sure nothing is too far in one direction. In terms of the connection for the head and the neck, the head should overlap about halfway on the sphere. You don't want to go down too far because then the opening of the neck will be too small. You kind of just want to hit the highest point of the sphere. When you're done and duplicate everything, we're going into the sculpting mode and use the lasso tool to separate the back of the head from the front. I lean towards the back of the head so that the seam will be covered up by hair later. And just like with making the joints, we're going to slice that and mask it to a new object. Of course, resize the pieces if you need, but now you have a front panel and a back panel. Also, it's a good time to duplicate everything again. The head is just a solid chunk of clay right now, which isn't very helpful, so add a regular sphere, subdivide it once, and drag it inside the head. Turn on the transparent mode and head back into sculpting. So now you want to drag that sphere around so that it makes the hole that will hollow out the head. We also don't need to make life unnecessarily complicated, so make sure you turn on symmetry. Keep in mind that you're going to cut into the eyes and the neck, so don't go too far. You just want the hollowed out section to be big enough for you to stick tools in, but small enough to keep the walls thick enough to safely print. Make sure you flip back and forth between solid and transparent mode to make sure you didn't break through the mesh anywhere. Now back in object mode, you're going to use that sphere and the Boolean modifier to carve into the back and front of the head. Now using that same modifier, we're going to cut the holes for the neck and the eyes. Please make sure you duplicate after each step because it's really easy to make a mistake. And you definitely don't want to have to do more work than you need to if one step goes wrong. Trust me. Now that we have the head hollowed out, the next few steps are going to be for the elastic attachment and the magnets. When I'm doing this by myself, I tend to just eyeball it, but for your convenience, here are some measurements you can put in when you first drag in the object into your workspace. I'm scaling these pieces up twice their size for the final doll, so if you want to use a different sized magnet, keep that in mind. And then for the elastic connection, I just put 2 holes in the top of the head for the paper clip to go through. I use that paper clip to make it into a hook so that the elastic can go around. For the magnet holes, I turn a cylinder to the side and then cut into the front and back panels. Make sure you keep everything lined up and not too close to the edge of the wall. I make 3 magnet holes, I just find this to be a bit more secure. The last thing we need to do is use another cylinder to cut a hole into the neck and make a bar for the elastic to tie around. My doll's main elastic piece also comes up and loops around this bar, so I finished the elastic path for the torso, but remember this is based on how you planned out your elastic path in the last video. While I'm at it, I go ahead and use the box mask tool to make the irises in the eyes and slice off the back end so that they actually fit into the head when we print them. And look at that, now you're completely done with the digital file for your doll. The next part is making these pieces ready to be printed. Based on how detailed your pieces are and your patience for sanding, you can either print your pieces out of resin or filament. You can of course print an entire doll out of just one of these materials. It really all depends on what you have access to and what you want from a certain piece. For me, for example, I like to print the head and the hands out of resin because they have more detail. And I really don't want to do sanding on pieces that small. For the rest of the body, I typically print out of PLA. I prefer matte PLA because it hides layer lines, sands a lot easier, and takes paint better than regular PLA. There are so many types of filaments to print in though, many being stronger and even easier to sand. But I find that a lot of those require an enclosed 3D printer, high levels of ventilation, and can be a bit more finicky to print with. If you're interested and want to go into a full deep dive of all of these types of filaments, then I highly recommend checking out this video by MM's Prop Shop. If you're printing in resin, then I would recommend starting off with just a basic resin. I've been hearing that people have had problems with regular resin being way too delicate for dolls. I honestly haven't run into too many problems with this, as long as the pieces are thick enough. But I can also totally see where people could run into some problems with the strength level. There actually is a brand of resin specifically designed for doll makers, but I haven't tried that out yet. Once I do, I'll definitely make sure to let you guys know what I think. The last thing you need to know is that for filament prints, I like to use the Cura slicer, and for my resin prints, I like to use Lychee. Lychee? Whatever. Don't worry, I'll run through how to use both, and yes, they're free. Before we do anything though, we're going to need to make these pieces into a file type that the 3D printing programs will understand. In other words, an STL or OBJ. For me, I like doing this while I have two Blender workspaces open. One with my body file and one that's just empty. Select a piece and copy and paste it into the new empty workspace. If there's two of that object, or the object has a mirror modifier, then you're going to have to go into scope mode and slice one of them off. You want to do this so that you have full control over how the pieces are placed on the printing bed later. Once you have things copied into the empty file, all you have to do is go to the file drop down, go to export, and then select STL. At this point, you'll be asked where you want the file to go, and that's completely up to you, just remember where you put it. First, I'm going to talk about Cura. When you get past all those questions asking about your printer and printing preferences and whatnot, you should get to a screen that looks like this. To put pieces into the workspace, go to the file icon and select the STLs that you made. It's going to look really small at first, but to fix that we're going to need to scale it up, which we do by going over to the left sidebar. Here you can actually double check how big these pieces are actually going to be. In this little section you can also rotate and mirror pieces, which is why I brought in two of the upper arm files. To actually see and make more specific adjustments on how the piece is printed, you need to hit the slice button first. Then from here you want to switch over into the preview tab. Go over to the right hand drop down and go through the list. I'll scroll through my options so you can make them exactly the same if you want. The only setting I tend to adjust based on the print is the infill density. This is pretty much self-explanatory, but basically this is how dense the inside of your print is. The higher the number is, the stronger your print is, but it will also take longer. For my projects, I like to stay between 5 and 10%, but again, you can go crazy with the numbers if you want. You can also kind of play around a bit with the infill pattern. I just stick with the triangle option because it's done well for my dolls so far. The other thing you might have to switch is making the build plate adhesion type a raft. Some people can print without this, and that really depends on your printer and your printer's mood, but to save myself from the potential drama, I just stick with using raft. If you want to do some test prints at this point, just set the pieces to the original scale, or a really small scale, and go ahead and save those files to a micro SD card. Here's a test I did for the legs. It's working exactly how I wanted it to, so I go back into Cura and scale the pieces up to 200%, then just print everything out. Another thing to keep in mind though is how you lay the pieces on the print bed. In the test, I wasn't really caring how smooth things were, so I laid everything down. This created very obvious layer lines at the top, and a whole bunch of supports in the back of the leg. Since I don't want that, I'm going to print the leg standing straight up. This keeps the print a whole lot smoother and makes it so that there's less work to do later. For the resin prints, I'm going to switch over to Lychee. If there's a red button yelling at you to fix the model, just click it to automatically fix things. This program tends to be a bit of a drama queen when it comes to finding some random mistake in your file. Most of the times, it's not even going to affect your print, so I wouldn't panic. In the left section, I add a duplicate of the hand and mirror it. Keep in mind that your print is going to print upside down, and that resin printers, unlike filament printers, like printing pieces at an angle, specifically so that the surface area of the start of the print is smaller. It doesn't have to be the smallest point, the pieces just have to be not on the thickest point. You can kind of see what I mean by going over to the Export tab and hitting the simulation button on the left of your screen. When you're done setting things up, go to the Prepare tab and select Automatic Supports. You should also make sure you have a raft on these prints too. And now the last thing to do is to export it to a USB drive. While it's exporting, it'll show you a little video, and that's just what the 3D printer sees as it's printing the pieces. And with all of that, we can print the final doll. When you have all of your pieces, you can do a test string if you want, but I always like to go ahead and get the sanding and the painting out of the way. For slight misprints, I like to use wood filler or sand until the problem goes away, which is what I'll be doing for this slight layer shift. Basically, just sand everything to get it as smooth as you have patience for, and then go ahead and paint. And there you go, you've made a BJD. At this point, you can go crazy with the paint, the clothes, pretty much add whatever you want. I really hope this series helped you make your dream doll into reality. If not, I hope you at least feel a little bit more confident working in Blender. With that all being said, thanks for watching, stay sweet, and I'll see you, hopefully in 2 seconds when you click this video.